overwhelming.
I'm just so impressed by people who leave their homes and like put bras on, and it's just so impressive.
And then add traffic and everything.
I know,
We're not from here, but this is what you do every day is a miracle. So I'm Penn. This is Kim. Thank you for those of you standing. Thank you for coming.
We're gonna talk fast.
Yeah, we're gonna talk fast and we're gonna talk loud. Okay. We have done these before, and this is our second one. Okay. And the first one went great, but we had like a Q&A thing after about 30 minutes. And I could tell, because I have ADHD, that people with ADHD hate waiting 30 minutes to ask questions. And so I want to encourage you guys to raise your hand at any point in time. So I'm not just talking at you guys for 30 minutes.
Okay.
And it's totally okay.
And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 30 minutes kind of chatting through the book. Definitely time for Q&A at the end, and then we'll sign some books and take some pictures and give awkward hugs, okay? I figured we'd go, so one thing I'm very proud of in this book is all the graphics, and everything on the cover is a story. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through the graphics, if you haven't had a chance to read the book, to talk about where these kind of line up in terms of the stories of the book.
Mm-hmm.
First, I want to start with the title, ADHD is Awesome. If you have ADHD, you probably saw that title and wanted to throw the book at us because it doesn't feel awesome all of the time, right? But there's a reason we wanted to call it ADHD is Awesome.
Yeah, so my dad taught me this. My dad's a preacher, and the word awesome is all over the Bible. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it, a lot of times it's used and you're like, wait, why are they describing something that's awesome? So in fact, the definition of awesome, for those of you who would like to know it, it's on the first page of the book. Extremely impressive or daunting, inspiring great admiration, apprehension, or fear. So it's not exactly the way that we describe it all the time. It's very powerful, right? It's sometimes hard to comprehend. It can be a lot, but the reason why we believe that ADHD is awesome, we think it's all these things. We think it's scary when you sometimes leave the stove on and you leave the house and you almost burn down the house and send your neighbor to the emergency room. You know, like all these things have happened. But we want to reframe ADHD and let people know that with all of that comes wonderful dynamic personalities that cause you, if you have ADHD, to potentially be way more creative than those with a typical brain. Sometimes more spontaneous, outside the box thinkers, innovators, great inventors like Thomas Edison had ADHD. And so that's why we chose to use the term awesome. Having said that, we know it sucks sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you live with someone with ADHD, we know it sucks even worse.
And so my contribution to the book, this is very research-based, but my contribution was as a partner and a parent of somebody with ADHD. And I will say, the stories we're going to tell tonight about the graphics, there's some negative to it. Like they're negative sometimes. But I will say the research has shown that the ADHD brain is more creative. There are studies that we write about in here that they gave they gave a group of people, they said, describe an alien fruit. And so the non-ADHD brain said, okay, it was like an apple with stripes or something. The ADHD brain was like, they had like teeth and tongues and hammers. I mean, it was so outside the box. So the ADHD brain, they are the problem solvers. The world would be really boring without them. Okay, moving on. We have our fly swatter pen.
Oh, God.
Do you want to tell us about fly swatter?
Has anybody gotten to this part of the book yet? Yeah. It's kind of gross, right? All right. So I wasn't diagnosed until college for a couple of reasons. So for those of you who are younger, you may have heard of ADHD very early on. It wasn't a thing. I'm almost 50. It was not a thing. No one said, oh, you must have ADHD. You were a space cadet, or you were disrespectful, and you were hyper, and that was, you just dealt with it. And the way that my family dealt with it, thank God for my mother, who somehow just inherently put some systems in place to help me get through every single day. And so she was like the original caretaker, and she was the OG of how I got to be who I am right now. But, I went to college and it got a little bit more difficult for me. I went from small classes to big classes, and I was wondering, hey, is there something going on? And then I was at my grandmother's funeral on my senior year, and our entire family was sitting in a room talking about what we were going to do about our beach trip. We had a beach trip we went on every year, and it was devastating to hear that we're probably going to stop now because grandma's dead. And
Grandma's dead.
How are we gonna do this? So I'm like thinking in my head about all these wonderful moments that I had at the beach. I'm looking around at the people and thinking, I remember a moment with you, and I'm fixated on these things. And as I'm thinking about it, my Aunt Zell says, and I'm sorry, none of us can focus. You were chewing on a used fly swatter. Can you please get it out of your mouth? And I looked down and I had a used fly swatter. And we're in like Eastern North Carolina where there's a lot of flies. And I just looked at it and I think, how did that happen? What's wrong with me? And I went to get diagnosed. I drove myself.
It is so funny though, because his friends in college, they've been so sweet and supportive, and they read this and they're like, how did you get that far in life without a diagnosis?
They knew.
He walked to class with 2 left shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a mystery. Anyway, so he got diagnosed, thank goodness, later. But so often we write about this. There are people who are chronically underdiagnosed. Women are underdiagnosed, and I'll read a part here. Girls and women's symptoms tend to get overlooked partially because of social pressure for girls to internalize their difficult experience. As a result, boys are 2 to 3 times more likely to receive a diagnosis as girls. Adult women with ADHD get described as chatty or overly social and chalk up their symptoms to just having a social personality. And it is hard to be a woman with ADHD because there is a lot heaped upon us. If you're
Sign up genius.
Oh my God, sign up genius. With ADHD. I don't know how you would do it. Also, really highly intelligent people are underdiagnosed because you can kind of white knuckle it and make it through, and if you're getting an A in a class, you're not going to be labeled as a problem. Also, in the minority populations, Black and brown kids are labeled just because of systemic racism as they have behavior problems, and they're not flagged for diagnosis. Also, Dr. Tamani Coper, who we interviewed, she's a pediatrician professor. She said there's suspicion in the Black community that the ADHD label is being used as an excuse to dismiss and pathologize Black boys in particular. So some kids who might benefit from a diagnosis don't receive it. So there's
systemic racism in communities. There are in doctors' offices. It's everywhere when it comes to medicine.
Yeah. So it was important to us when talking about how Penn was lucky enough to get a diagnosis that there's so many that are not as fortunate, because if you know the reason why your brain is doing that, it to me it helps. Okay, let's move on. With the mixing board.
Oh yeah.
Mixing board.
Yeah. So everyone has an aha moment when they realize something about themselves. And mine for the study of this book was actually with a psychologist, Dr. Marcy Caldwell, who compared my brain to a mixing board. And she's talking about one of those light mixing boards. If you're in the back of like a theater and you see like 20 of these dials, and you can like make this perfect lit atmosphere by putting like a spotlight up, a little bit of a spotlight, maybe some of the blue cans here. You got maybe there's like a couch, and the couch gets lit from the back and from the side, and they all work in kind of perfect harmony. The neurotypical brain works in perfect harmony if you consider all of those lights to be tasks or things that are going on around you. Like let's say you're making a breakfast, and you've got eggs, you've got toast, you've got the kid coming downstairs, you've got water, you've got coffee, and you can balance all of these things and dim them up just a little bit here and there. Our brains have those same lights, but there are no dimmers. They are on-off switches, and when one of them turns on, the rest of those turn off, and they exit your working memory.
Yeah.
Yes? Right? So that's bad sometimes, right? That can be tough in a world like this, but it also can be really, really cool if you're able to find something and block out everything else, and it's a task that you have to complete. You enter into something called hyperfocus. Anyone ever heard of hyperfocus?
I'm so jealous.
It is our superpower, right? It is our superpower, and it is the good side of that on and off switch. Now we're living in a world where it's really tough to keep that switch on and not pay attention to everything else going on around you. But for me, when Marcy Caldwell explained that to me, and I understood it, it made me more aware of when I was entering into it and allowed me to stay in it for a little bit longer.
Yeah. I get super duper jealous of hyperfocus. But that was a big takeaway for me, the whole working memory part of it, the light switch, because when he would leave the stove on. It just didn't even enter his memory that he had turned it on. And so when I learned that his brain actually wasn't capable of holding that information, it allowed me to offer a little more grace. Okay. A little more. Okay.
House is still burned down. So
we're getting to that important part of that.
The suitcase. You want to tell the suitcase story?
Yeah, that's a little bit of working memory right there. So we as a family, as we were finishing this book and feeling high-fiving ourselves, and feeling great about all that we've done in this book, took a family trip to Florida. And as we were about to board the plane, this woman came up who was, her son was on the football team at my daughter's high school, and she wanted everyone to know that. She wanted everyone to know she was Mavericks. Yeah, sorry, well, I can't say. Oh, that's right. Sorry. Never mind. Okay, very nice woman. Very nice woman. I hope she's not watching. Very sweet.
Very nice woman.
But she's like full of energy.
So nice.
And so, but yeah, have you ever like started a conversation with someone and it just,
Hi, you. Not you.
Have you, where are you going?
See, anybody? Okay, we're fine. We're fine. Okay. We're safe. We're safe.
So, but it's one of these conversations, a high energy conversation that you just carry into the plane, and you're like walking the same boarding time, and so it just.
We had bought the tickets really last minute, so we were seated all over the plane.
Yeah.
I was seated in the back of the plane. I get off last, totally fine, and the family's waiting there. He goes, "Hey, babe, I forgot my luggage in the bathroom at the airport," and so
because I got stuck talking to her.
not stuck. It was a very awesome conversation.
And this is called the ADHD no filter break.
Yes, yeah. So he loved it, and he was so focused on this conversation. But so he landed in another state without any luggage, his inhaler, his any of that stuff. So
I'm going to tell you what I was feeling, because you guys have felt this before. I was feeling embarrassed of something that I just done. I was feeling ashamed of the person that I was. And this is after completing all of this research about the book. And it's that little moment where you're like, man, I really do try the best I can, but I'm feeling a little bit broken right now. And that's when the most important thing you can possibly think of, other than limiting your self-talk, which you really should try not to say those things. You shouldn't say there's something wrong. But the most important thing was Kim at this moment. And and Kim responded really, really well.
we had learned, so we actually went back, because when you write a book, you like write it and rewrite it about 47 times. So we went back and put this part in. But I had learned that when I exploded on him, when I had a really big outsized reaction, it never helped. It never ever helped. So one of the sort of things we write about in here is from my side, which is very hard because I'm a busy mom and I don't need another child. It was offer connection instead of correction, which is very hard. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So when he goes, I left my suitcase in the bathroom. I'm going to call the airport to just make sure it doesn't get blown up by a bomb squad or something. And then he goes, and I'm going to Uber to a Target and I'm going to go buy some underwear and I'm going to make it right. You guys go ahead. And so I knew he was handling it. I knew he felt terrible. I'm like, this must be really hard. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you're going to have to delay. I'm not going to delay my trip, but I'm sorry. You're going to have, I'm sorry this is happening. This really sucks. I'm sorry. And like we figured it, we called the airport, we made it work. But I think that sort of connection.
So just like a couple things, like the empathy. I know this is hard. That means so much when you hear that from someone who's dealing with someone like me who feels alone and ashamed and all those things. So like just showing that empathy at that moment was incredible. Then of course I got to use my ADHD superpower of being like super outgoing and spontaneous, and I met a woman who worked for the pharmaceutical company that made my inhaler.
And he got it. Her life works out for this guy.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like, well, the only thing we could replace was the inhaler. And then, so the next thing I sort of offer is, the advice I've learned is finding, oh, hi. is finding ways to accentuate the positive. And so especially with my son, he's 14, but when I see him really trying to listen, like you were doing such a good job listening right now, you were rocking it. But if finding ways when they are doing awesome to point that out, I think we all love that, right? And then also setting reasonable goals for both of my ADHDers. If I say, hey, listen, we have company coming, I need you to do, go get the groceries and pressure wash the driveway and whatever you do and sweep the floors. Like if I can't tell him 10 things to do, I have to set if I need him to do something, I have to set very reasonable goals. So you can't talk and bring a suitcase. What you got?
Like my mom's always like, okay, brush your teeth, take a shower. I'm like, she's like, what did I say for you to do? I'm like,
yeah, you got nothing, right?
The dishwasher?
Yeah, the mixing board.
Yeah.
The mixing board, gotcha. Yeah, it's so one at a time is a great way to do it. But your mom isn't going to be able to say brush your teeth and then come back and say take a shower. So we'll talk about this later. It's on us to learn how to do that and put a system in place.
There is like a very working memory thing. Our moderator when we were in New York, Katie Finneran, she's very ADHD. We love her so much, but packing lunches was overwhelming to her for her kids. And she's like, it's the same thing every day, but she couldn't get over it. So now she has a picture of it. It's just like a visual picture of what the lunch needs to look like that like it helps cue her. So not even like a list of it, a picture of it. What do you?
When you have conversations, like how do you focus on the topic that the other person's talking
Oh, how to listen?
Because I'm like thinking about
What'd you say? Okay, listen. So that is still my white whale. It's funny. It's like one of the last chapters in the book, so a lot of you won't get to it. It might be a good idea just to jump to it.
Start at the end.
Start at the end, work your way back.
There's a serious answer and there's a fun answer. I'm gonna give you the serious answer first. You've gotta work on it. Like you have to treat listening like you are playing in the national championship of whatever sport it is.
it kind of feels like a chore.
It does because it's hard and it's so easy for other people, but it's really hard for us, so we have to work at it. Now, while you're working at it, there's some ways to cheat. Should I not tell them?
You can.
Okay. If someone is telling you a story and you've completely lost track of what they're saying, if you say it this exact way, if you go, wow, that's crazy. That can apply to something funny, unbelievable. If they're telling you the story, it's kind of interesting.
I just say cooler night.
There you go. The same thing. So we have that. Yeah, I've gotten busted in that before.
I would more.
Don't do that. Don't do
No.
that.
So what he does now is he'll say, "I am so
I
sorry.
apologize. And I say,
I am so sorry. Could you repeat that?" And I get a little offended because I have the most important things to say, obviously. And so, but I have to as part, and then I have to like get the emotions down and say, okay, here we go. So, do you want to move on? Oh, yeah. What do you got?
So that actually always happens to me where she's like talking to me and I'm like, okay.
Mhm.
I got it.
Yeah, dude. So I
I'm just
think
like
that-
thinking
yeah.
about like my soccer tournament or like
Yeah.
my the Roblox game that I got beaten in or like.
Well, let me ask your
something
mom.
like that.
How would you feel if you said, "Hey, mom, I'm sorry. Can you back up a bit? Like I didn't hear that last part."
Totally fine.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
Do you have?
Yeah, my daughter, I know when she was going to college down there, one of the things she would do to help her focus, she would doodle.
Yes.
And the professors would go, they would kind of challenge her because, are you paying attention? What are you doing? And
Yeah, we're living in a world where that is getting more and more understood. I want to get this in the hands of as many teachers as we possibly can, because doodling is a way to focus, actually. It is a way.
It's soothing.
So is, like, I chew on my shirt collar, which is a gross thing to do. But that helped me focus when I was like working on something. You chew on your shirt collar?
I don't. It's when he shared that. And my
We've had
son.
so many people be like, yeah, me too.
Yeah, my son, he was ruining shirts, and when Penn told me, he's like, "Oh, I think we need to get him tested." That was my. And
But the point is, like, there's nothing wrong with you if you're doodling. It's, I mean, as long as you're not fixated on to the point that you can't hear what else is going on. Most of the time, you can just do it. What's up, man?
In school, when you were a kid, how did it feel when the teachers got mad at you for not listening? I was about to ask.
Yeah, you're doing a
I
good
was
job.
thinking about
I felt broken. I felt ashamed. I felt embarrassed because it seemed like it was pretty easy for everybody else to listen. I also felt that at that time, maybe they didn't quite understand what my needs were. And a lot of times, the school I hope the school is better for you, but man, they would just talk for an hour and without any interaction for a long time. And so that was really tough for me. So there's some hacks. Most teachers want to know more about ADHD. And if you're the parent of a child with ADHD, they want you to come talk to them. I'm going to say most teachers want that because they don't know. They don't know. And most teachers want to take the strengths-based approach. Okay, this is for you. You can listen too. Strengths-based approach is when a teacher or a boss or somebody else comes to you, and instead of saying, "Here's what you're doing wrong," they say, "Let's talk about when things are working.
When is it?
When are you crushing it? When are you doing a good job instead of when are you messing up?"
Yeah, and we were able to have that conversation with my son's teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was in middle school. He's going to high school next year, which is crazy. So we're trying to figure that out. But we learned he actually was killing it in the morning. The morning he was great. If he had math in 6th grade at the end of the day, and he was toast. Yeah, so.
We had to request
Yeah, so
English in the morning.
yeah, so we were able to do that. The high school says they don't know. But then he had to be at the front of the class. He had to be there was all these things that we had to, and he has a block schedule too now. So, but he had to get permission to stand up, walk around, he could turn things up and create and just be able to move around without being disciplined.
Let me ask you something. Where do you sit in the class? You sit up front?
I don't actually have a choice, but I usually, but if I do have a choice, I usually sometimes sit near the middle or the back with my friends.
I he's currently on medication.
Okay.
So prior to medication, he was always outside of the class because he couldn't sit still.
Yeah.
So he was
Sure.
helping the kindergarten teachers,
Yeah.
helping the PE teachers whenever there was independent time. But he's on medication now, so he's able to sit through his classes.
Awesome.
Great.
That's great. And I will say, if you can handle it up front, because our brains, we just take in everything.
Yeah,
So if we're sitting in the back of people's heads is interesting, that window's interesting. If I'm the teacher, and by the way, one of the reasons you're doing such an awesome job right now is you are front and center.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job.
Yes,
So hang on, I know you got a question. We got to get to a couple more things. But
Okay.
I know I said Brian.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the
Yes.
Post-it notes? And we're going to get to the upsides and then.
Post-it. Oh, by the way, the Post-it note, if you buy the book in a couple of months when all these new prints go away, is going to say New York Times bestseller on it. The Post-it note is the system that you put in place. Okay, ADHDers, we just went through this journey. My wife just talked about showing empathy and being forgiving and showing us grace. Okay, we cannot take that for granted. It is our job now because they're giving us that gift. We're going to work our butts off. Okay, to pay them back by trying. When we mess up, we're going to say, "I'm sorry. I'm going to try to get better, and this is how you get better." Okay? Brushing your teeth, and what was the other thing you had to do?
Take a shower.
Take a shower. All right, dude. I know this seems crazy, and you don't want to do this, but I'm a 50-year-old man, and I make lists, and they're all over the
So
house.
we have these
Yes.
big, huge notepads that
Yep.
are Post-its.
This can be a permanent list.
We
on
just
your-
have these
yeah.
all over the house because it allows for big lists everywhere.
Yep.
So on my son's mirror, it's every day, and even this man here, every day I have to remind him to put shoes on. So, but we have lists of things it's the working memory thing. It's the working memory thing. So it's brush teeth, wash face, all of those things are on the
Yep.
mirror.
And so a little trick about the ADHD brain, we like dopamine, right? We like to, and there's a little mini dopamine hit. If on the list, you put a little box next to it, and you check it off. It feels good to check something that's just a little hit, bam! You have to check that off.
I actually literally whenever I'm doing my test or a math packet, I always check up and it says 2, and they're like, "Why are you checking it off? You don't know if you got it right." I'm just
We don't have enough dopamine, and we need to generate our own with stuff like
I'm
that.
just
That's
I finished it. Check it off.
So this is kind of validating because, and I'm glad we try to say it with as much niceness as we can, because sometimes I know ADHD is tough, but it can't ever be an excuse.
Right.
It's you have to work
It's the
It sucks, but
explanation.
you have to work
It's not the
harder
excuse.
now.
Yes.
You have to work
So it's
harder.
like, give you a hug, work harder.
Yeah, so it's the explanation,
Yeah.
but he
It's
is
the
not
why.
allowed to use it
Right.
as an
Yeah.
excuse.
It's the why, and so these systems that you put in place, you have to remember why you're doing it, right? You're repaying your family for loving you and being awesome. You understand your brain now, and you have a strategy because you understand it better from reading the book. And then honestly, some of these systems are like, they're kind of fun, kind of interesting to talk about. We're creative. We can come up with our own creative systems. I've left, like, oh my gosh, the keys. I left keys on top of a car, could not find them at a beach house 2 hours away. Told my wife that I needed her to drive. Asked her nicely to drive with the extra key. She drove 2 hours. She got there, and my keys were on top of the car. She came upstairs and she threw them at me. So before I wrote the book, I hadn't written the book yet. I deserved it. I felt awesome. But so I have a magnet on top of my car that holds nothing. But it's a mental cue not to put any crap on top of my car, because I back out of the driveway all the time with coffee mugs on my car. So I have like I didn't
And
invent
there's
anything.
so there's
Yeah.
a magnet on the dryer, which is take inhaler, chapstick stuff
Yeah.
out of pockets
Yep.
because headphones and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's and it, again, the magnets don't hold anything, but they're a cue to like they sort of trigger
Yep.
something.
Okay, what else? My pants have a lot of zippers and I have a lot of pockets in my pants, so I can take everything with me. I have a song that I sing for my glasses, my wallet, keys, and phone. It's glasses, wallet, keys, and phone. Keys and got it. Everyone's got it. We've all got it. Okay, for guys, you ever get in trouble for leaving the toilet seat up? Yeah, I pee sitting down. Forever. I just pee sitting down. Why not? Right? Just pee sitting down. Yeah, like the toilet seat stays down. Forever. Yeah. Sorry, I got a great patient gentleman back there. Yeah.
I'm curious about how you interact with your music stuff when you're going back and forth. So I'm sure comparing, producing, you said, for me it's no problem at all when you're switching in computers and comparing or everything. How is that for you in terms of that? Focus and space out?
Yeah, music makes sense to me, man. It does. So it's our creativity. I'll use one more metaphor that we heard from Dr. Caldwell. Our creativity is like an open air concert, while a neurotypical brain is more like a VIP room with a bouncer and a rope, and everything is. You're able to keep certain things out and let certain things in. So when you're that open air concert and you're trying to discover new music and create new things, and you have a place with sounds and chords and all that, it just all comes to me at the same time, and it's a perfect safe place for that to happen.
We're talking about 30 channels, right? And
Yeah.
and effects and everything else.
Sure.
So that's a lot of information to keep in order, but you do.
Yeah, but that's okay. Here's another thing. That's something that I care about. That's something that's challenging, and that's something that's always new, which is like the triumvirate for people with ADHD.
Yeah.
So again, if we care about something and we want to focus on it, which we want to make music, it comes naturally to you, right? But the stuff that you're having like trouble with, do you really want to do that, or do you care about it? Like, I guess parenting you care about, but like, do you really want to? You want to make your kids happy. You want to make your kids happy, but do you want to, do all that other stuff? Right.
Yeah. To have that all the information be able to be accessible, yet
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Did I answer that okay?
So,
Okay, good. Yes. Yes, hi.
I'm an ADD therapist. Everyone in my house pretty much has it. And I guess my question is, like, you guys have been able to follow the thread on a lot of things, right? So like, we're multi-passionate, right? We have all these things that we get excited about. Marie Forleo has ADHD and she talks about it, and look what she's created, and we mentioned the book. How do you do it? How do you, like, obviously for music, it's not a big deal because it has those 3 categories for you, right? How do you follow through on something like, okay, I want to write this book, but books are freaking, that's a tedious thing to do. I was able to go to grad school and do it because it had steps that were obvious.
So I will say, yes. So that is also a question, like, how did he actually write a book with ADD? When I tell you that the man loves a deadline, And so he could, and I'd say when you sign a deal with a publisher, first of all, our publisher was wonderful. They're like, this is a very niche book. It won't be like a New York Times bestseller or anything, but so we said, we're like, this is like an act of service, right? Our son had been diagnosed. Like, I wanted to know more. This is just something we wanted to put into the world, and whatever happens, happens. But when you sign a deal with a publisher, and then they give you money to work on it, they don't like it when you miss a deadline. So I'd say there was like that
Like
the
the
pressure,
outside structure.
the outside structure,
And the deadlines.
and a deadline. If they'd said, "Hey, Penn, sometime in the near future, if you could write this book," we would not be
sitting here right now.
We would not be here.
No.
So I think it's the boundaries and the structure of the outside world that help get that done.
You can also self-impose a deadline if you've been doing this for long enough. If someone doesn't give it to you, you can give it to yourself.
And it's that, I have to say, he's actually uncharacteristically like very disciplined in that regard, which I have enough experience with other ADHDers, so I know that's a gift, that he is actually pretty, I know it's not really common.
How did you get through high school? Because I'm going to high school next year, and I don't know what.
I mean,
Block
there's-
schedule, lots of people.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, black stuff, right? So, look, ADHD is like a snowflake. There's no two ADHDs that are alike. But I think the first thing that I would do if I were you is do a triage of like what's troubling you. So like what are, like on a scale of 1 to 5, what's really tough for you? Is there a certain topic that's tough for you? Is there a certain subject?
It's mostly staying still or having conversations.
Okay, so good. Okay, so or listening, right?
Yeah.
Like that's your big thing. So one of the things with systems in place, like everyone's got their own, but you start with the one that means the most either to you or for me. A lot of times it's what bothers my wife the most, and I start with that, and you do one at a time, and then you move on to the next one later, and it may take you the entire year to get through your entire list. With listening, I highly recommend you get as close to the front of the class as you can.
I do.
Yeah.
I have
That's
an
great.
IEP. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so,
I
you're,
understand
that is
You have how
great.
many APs?
IEP, that's
Oh,
the
IEP.
individual education. plan.
Okay,
So
I got you.
PC has one too.
Okay.
But they, I will say that as long as I feel like your teachers have been so great. I know and everybody has their own experience, but the amount of teachers we've reached out to, like just being able to like get up and walk around in a way that's not disruptive. And hopefully in high school there's more freedom to do that.
Mhm.
I see it to be easier.
Yeah, I think it's easier than middle school to do that. So, and I also know for my son, he, if he's just hearing something that's not actually helping him, but they all have laptops now and nobody writes anything anymore. But he actually, if he can type it and then come home and write it on a flashcard, he just has to like hear it, see it, smell it, taste it. Like he has to dance it. He has to know around it too for it to stick in his brain. And then he just has to, it's harder.
I'm also worried about the teachers because last year I had a bad one that never even used my accommodations and like got very impatient with me.
The hope is that the world is changing, and it is changing quickly. I don't know if it's changing quickly enough, but what's that?
Yes.
That's the hope. That's the hope.
Hi. I was actually going to comment on hers. I'm a late diagnosed ADHDer, so I was diagnosed at 42.
Wow.
41. Because of TikTok. Weirdness.
Love it.
And, just watching these videos. But one of the things that I did when I was in high school, and I recognized it immediately as an ADHD coping mechanism, was I would write, I couldn't just read a chapter in a book and consume and absorb the information. So I would literally write, like, remember the notes? You'd be like, Roman numeral 1, and then you write it out, and then you
outline it.
I would
Lowercase
take
a.
notes, copious notes, and I would sometimes even rewrite the entire chapter by hand, so I could remember it.
It's
Very
like,
similar to your son.
yeah, it's like the
and having
hand
to
brain.
have all my senses
Oh.
touched.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. What do you got?
Yeah. So I love theater. So I was on stage in a song, in the middle of a song, like a duet. It was the other dude, he was singing, and I was like, it was a very serious song. And then I was thinking of a video my friend sent me. Sitting there on stage, looking at him, trying to be like, serious and somber while also simultaneously trying to hold my laughter and remember what cue I come in on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just like,
How'd it go?
Yeah.
I think I pulled it off, but it was a
I
little.
bet you
Yeah.
did.
In the moment, I was just like, what's happening?
I know. Yeah.
Man, theater's a great place for us, isn't it? Like it was kind of where I found my people when I was in middle school and high school, was performing arts, because there's a lot of us there. I mean, it kind of fits the mold of all the things we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
I bet, like you said, you pulled it off. I bet you were great, because like don't ever lose that spontaneity when you're performing. Most great comedians are just like that.
Do you want to do the scroll?
Oh yeah, what time is it?
I have no idea what time it is. We're just.
30.
Oh my God, we're great on time.
Oh, yeah, 10 minutes.
Yeah. We're fine. We do the squirrel thing, and then we can.
Is that our last one?
Yeah.
Oh, squirrel. Yeah. So.
Yes.
So there's this squirrel.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I can do the fishbowl too. So, all right, I'll do the fishbowl really quick. We were going to skip the fishbowl, but you pay attention. So. The fishbowl is, yeah, right. So there's two metaphors with the fishbowl. One of them is a more like the mixing board, about how like everything that's in your fishbowl you can see, but once it leaves the fishbowl, like it's like it never even existed and it exits your working memory. But I think the most valuable metaphor of the fishbowl is how it affects my emotions. And you think of the water in the fishbowl as your emotions, right? It's like how you're feeling right now. And if one thing happens, like the tiniest thing, or maybe seemingly to other people, like something happens that's bad to you, it's like putting a little drop of red in the fishbowl, and it tints the entire color of the tank. Right? And so something can go wrong, and it leads to this thought, like, oh my gosh, I can almost see it. Like the sky is darker, and it smells bad in here, and everything sucks, and I'm terrible, and I messed up, and this is awful. And you get overwhelmed, and you flood emotionally when that happens. But like I can't believe I'm going to give you a good side of this, but I'm going to give you a good side of this, and that is that the next drop that comes in, no matter what it is, it changes the color of the fishbowl, and you've almost forgotten what happened just a few minutes ago. And what does that make people with ADHD good at?
Just very forgiving.
Yeah, we're very forgiving.
I love it. It's amazing for me.
Yeah.
I hope.
Are you nodding your head? Is she very forgiving?
Yeah, she is.
But it's awful. And,
Oh my God, why do you let me get away with that?
Yeah, I have to say, as a mom,
Yeah.
if I saw, I get that. You know, I get that. But when I'm an idiot and he forgives me, I love it. It's great. But I have to say, as a kid, Penn describes himself as that he cried a lot. He was very emotional, and he had and I had no idea that emotional dysregulation was such a big part of ADHD. And so, he had wonderful parents, and they were very supportive, but I saw the same thing in my son, and he's kind of outgrowing it or learning how to deal with it a little bit. But you can tell he gets very, like, he really wants to explode, but he's learned how to cope with that. But yeah, we had to deal with some serious flooding. Okay, squirrel.
So the squirrel, I mentioned the squirrel about 9 times. If you guys saw Up, there was the dog that always would look at the squirrel, and he just was like the first great ADHD character that I remember when I was kind of learning about what my brain was like. And so, yeah, our last chapter is called One Last Word Before, Oh Look, a Squirrel. And a lot of you aren't going to make it to the last chapter, so I thought I would read it to you. Or maybe you will. Maybe you'll get to the last chapter. Maybe like so
Yeah.
We're so interested.
Audible's awesome, thank you.
I know.
There's the squirrel. Okay, so Kim and I sell a T-shirt through our website that says ADHD is awesome across the chest. Thank you. When we first posted it for sale, so many people bought one that we sold out within hours. I wish every one of you could claim that ADHD badge with that kind of pride. The struggle is real, but so are the joys. I love my brain. It's taken me on a voyage. My ADHD will be my companion for life on good days and bad. I tell myself, I have ADHD. ADHD does not have me. I know that I'm on one end of the ADHD spectrum, and many of you out there are really going through it. So I'm not trying to force you or myself to act like you're in a cheesy movie where everything is great at the end just because you tried. I simply hope you know that you and that all of us are more than a stereotypical composite of an ADHD diagnosis. Of the many things that make you special, your ADHD brain is just one of them. A better life with ADHD is out there. With the right tools, information, and support, you can live a wildly creative and successful life. The secret is, it's not actually ADHD that's awesome. It's you.
I just wanted to say, because I saw you getting emotional, but here's both of you have been so powerful in our story as well. And following you has helped us when we had to share his diagnosis with him. And we just think you're so inspirational and so positive and so needed, and we're just really, really grateful for writing this book.
I just wanted to piggyback on that, but he was in the room with us when we were, and the way the doctor described it, I was shocked. Like, I felt horrible as a parent having him in the room because I didn't know she was actually going to say it the way she did.
Mm-hmm.
Like an illness.
I'm glad you brought
Yes.
this up because I want to talk about
Yeah.
Yes.
It was like it's a very serious.
It's a sucky name, you guys. And it's incorrect.
Yeah.
So we don't have a deficit of attention. We have an abundance of attention. So that's wrong. We don't know where to focus the attention, but we have a lot of attention. We take in more stuff than anybody does. It's the focusing that's difficult. It's the executive functioning. Most of us, like a lot of us, don't have hyperactivity. So when they tell you that, they haven't even told you whether or not it's inattentive or hyperactive. And calling it a disorder is, I think, a disservice to what it is. It's a brain difference. So I'm sorry that you had a doctor who did that. Just like teachers, doctors are learning. And they're learning about strength space.
Your video, so I literally felt like his spirit drop. And then as a mom, I felt like so bad because I was just trying to get like paperwork to get him a 5 before in class. And so I was like, what do we just do? And then I came home and I remember, because I watched you guys anyway from like the pajama holiday.
Yeah.
It's very ADHD. Isn't it?
Yeah.
You guys should have done it a long time
So
ago.
I followed you guys from that, and I was like, I remember you had a video about it, and so we came home, and I'm trying to say, it's a superpower. That's what your one teacher said, and then I said, let's put on this video, and it was like that Little Mermaid
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We had a couple of things, and we started going through that, hole of watching your videos, and then he started singing around the house, and this was literally within hours of the doctor's office. And for me, that's just kind of a part of our story because it's like different, the way of perspective and how you can talk about something and how it makes a child and like those formidable years and your esteem and your identity. And so that was just like a big part. So like, thank you guys
Thank you for sharing that.
for having that, on that platform. So
Thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate it. I feel like we need to look in the sides. Does anybody in the sides have questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make an observation. I listened to your audiobook, which was awesome. And when you start talking about like the page, the conversations and where your brain goes,
Yeah.
like exactly when you said, "Wow, that's crazy," I'm thinking, Kim's gonna know that that's your hack, and then
Oh, she
my
might.
brain.
That's why.
But I just wanted to say that listening to everybody ask questions and watching how you, Ken, have actually answered and have been focused, that whatever work you've done in active listening, because that's something that I have trouble with myself, is amazing because you've been so present.
Thank you so much. I am exhausted emotionally.
But also, my man loves the spotlight.
But
Yeah.
I don't hate the spotlight. But thank you. And to your point, it takes work.
Yeah, and I have also learned because I used to walk into the room and just start talking, and he would be texting or doing a Wordle or something like that, and when he wouldn't pay attention to me, I got deeply offended. So now I have to say like, "Hello, husband, I need your attention," and so then he puts the phone down, squares his shoulder, listens. So we both have had to kind of edit how we're still working on it, but we both have had to kind of edit how we and start a conversation.
Yeah, I'm actually a school-based therapist, so I work with a lot of kids.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
My own kiddo with ADHD, but you guys have been so inspirational in putting a positive spin on it and it being a superpower. And like one of my proudest moments was when he wrote a book for school and it said about the author, and he said he acknowledged I have ADHD. And it helps give me energy, and that's why I'm so good at sports. And even though school is sometimes hard, and we've kind of figured out our own accommodations, and he does have an SST at school, but we get him to school 30 minutes early so that he has time to play and go on the swings, so that when he gets to class, he's regulated and ready to learn.
I love
And he
that.
gets he gets recess and lunch, and he gets to have snack at third recess so that he can get through the afternoon. But his teachers have been really supportive, and it's so. But just having this like positive spin that it's to try to get rid of that stigma, and that like there's so many neurodivergent people in the world, but that it's okay because it is a superpower.
Yeah.
And there are so many positives that come with it. So
That is
thank
such
you
a
guys
good
for that.
reminder. No, thank you. But that's a good reminder because my son, especially when the weather's nice, we have him like run in the morning, or he used to have basketball practice in the morning, and his days went so much better if he had some sort of outlet in the morning.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Hello.
Hi.
I
Hello.
want to start a comment. Some of my best friends have ADHD, and there are some teachers at my high school who are like super supportive, and they like there's like my math teacher. He's like really nice and like cool with like everybody and like what they
I
need
love
to
it.
do. And then there's like other teachers who are just like more like uptight about like who can like move and like whatnot. So I think that it's like really nice when you just fall into like that really inclusive environment, and then like I feel like my friends with ADHD just kind of like open up a bit more like when they're in that environment.
Yeah.
So, do you have ADHD, or are you just here because you're supporting your friends?
I'm just here because I'm supporting.
Good on you. That's amazing. That's so great. So that's like, honestly, that's the most. Yeah, like we should. That is the this book isn't just for the people with ADHD, right? It's for those who love or care for someone who has it. And if you make the effort to understand them and walk with them and encourage them, you have no idea what an impact you're going to have on their life. It's going to be incredibly positive.
Should we do one? Okay, one more. Yeah. Or two more. We'll do two more.
When I heard that ADHD was hereditary, I'm like, where are they? I was reading the book and I'm like, yeah, my dad does that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I got it from my dad.
Yeah.
It is. Scientists have identified 7 genes so far that are linked to ADHD, and they are heavily hereditary. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Is there one?
We got-
Yeah.
I have a quick thought. To me, it's like almost like being human is awesome.
Yeah.
And what are we normalizing? Because I think like we're not robots.
Right.
And it's like if you're a normal like robot and you do the same stuff every day, you're like a normal person in society.
Yeah. But that's like
I
our
don't want to be
society.
normal. I want to be abnormal. I want to do extraordinary things. And if I was like this normal person, I would never be creative and
Yeah.
think outside the box and have all this energy.
But we're building everything for robots.
So I love to.
One more. Right.
How do you learn? Because I've had a lot of things in my life, not ADHD, but another disability I have. And I want to know, how did you get through accepting it, empowering yourself,
Yeah.
and socializing in the tough economy that we do live in?
Mhm.
Because I struggle with that, and I want to know how you empower yourself. You guys are very empowering. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So for me, like accepting my ADHD, there was a lot of stages, right? Like the first one was when I met my people when I was in theater class, when I was in middle school. Like I found like-minded people. That was a big step forward for me. The next step was finding a job that was like really ADHD friendly, which was local news. Like you had if you bored people after 8 seconds, then they change the channel. It's like actual research, so it's perfect for me, right? The biggest thing that got me to where I am right now was the research that I put into this book, understanding the science of the brain that I have, and it made it. So for me, I think that's important for everyone, because whether or not you're an extrovert and you want to go out, or you see society as difficult, if you understand what's going on and you understand emotional regulation, you get through things like this book or talk to doctors about it. It makes it okay. Like you're not saying what's wrong with me anymore. You know what your deal is, right? So that, to me, it was the research that gave me the biggest leap. I think if everyone does a little bit of research, no matter what your personality is, it's going to help a ton. Did I answer your question? Okay.
The gift of you guys sharing so openly is everything. And the way that you kind of being vulnerable about shame as a man, if that's like.
Do we not do that normally? There's a lot of laughter from the women here.
I mean, that's a gift, right? Like if
Have you heard how many self-aware boys we've had here? Like, and girls.
But there is this expectation that girls.
Yeah, and you guys are already
Yeah,
really good.
there was this
Yeah,
expectation.
exactly.
So okay.
Yeah. Okay. One more, and then I think we're gonna
do some signings. Yeah,
books.
yeah.
So like sometimes my friends, like, I'm just like talking about what I did over the weekend, and I'm just like talking too much, and they're like, "Why are you being so annoying? We're trying to play the soccer game, or the soccer, or the World Cup match." And I'm like, "I'm just telling you about my weekend. Is there anything, like tips that you have, like to like not?"
I'm you, man. I'm you. I was you as a kid. I think that like the fact that you just said it out loud and you're being aware of it, I think you're already on the right path. I think maybe like the next time you catch yourself doing it, and first of all, these kids, I'm sure they love you, but if you make an effort, I know you're having a good time, but if you make an effort to ask someone a question about
Their weekend.
yeah, no matter how young they are, like especially if they're dudes love talking about themselves. So like that, like give it a try, like maybe just once a day. Try that out, and you also might just learn something cool about one of your friends. But I'm just telling you, man, you're me. I went through the same thing. I still have some trouble with it, to be honest with you. I'm talking about myself now.